What do I need to be good at to be great at something?
Hello, everyone. You are listening to She Leads with Carly, and in this show, we talk to the absolute best, brightest, and yes, badass leaders.
Tap into where your natural curiosity takes you. Just making sure you're not your own roadblock. Even if you do fall, you're going to fall and you're going to learn.
Together, let's build a DNA of what it takes to rise to the top and truly make an impact. I'm your host, Carly Malatsky. I am excited to welcome my guest today, Samantha Skey. Samantha is a Chief Executive Officer for She Media, a top 5 lifestyle media company reaching 88 million women each month. Sam began her career in digital technology and media over 25 years ago at Interactive Imaginations, a gaming startup that went public in 1998. She held management roles with CNET, Disney, and Alloy Media and Marketing. Prior to joining She Media in 2013, Sam was Chief Revenue and Marketing Officer for cleantech innovator RecycleBank. She holds a BA in Comparative Literature from Hamilton College. She lives in Princeton with her husband and 2 children, and she coaches girls lacrosse on weekends. Sam, it is so great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. Thanks.
Of course. So first, Sam, set the scene for me. Where are you? I know I mentioned you're in Princeton, but where are you in the world? Are you working from home? What's the work situation?
I am working from home in a very grandmotherly or very traditionally feminine wallpaper behind me. This was going to be our guest room prior to COVID, and then it doubles as my home office. So we are back to work in New York City. About 3 days a week, trying to be flexible with people based on their needs. And then I get a glorious mix of working from home as well. So it's really, really nice.
Yeah. So Sam, I want to go all the way to the beginning. Sam as a little girl. So where did you grow up? How was your childhood? And at this age, what were you most excited about?
Okay, so this is always a little embarrassing because I grew up in Princeton and I have returned home after being away for 30 years. But we moved back here during COVID, and it's my parents are still here. I was very fortunate and remain fortunate to have wonderful parents and great family, which Gen Xers don't say very often. We enjoy mostly blaming all of the ills that beset our lives on our parents. And I totally get that vibe as well. But so at this age, when I was little, it is weird, dude, because you're back in Princeton, as am I, and now I have teenage kids. And so I'm watching them grow up and feeling this extreme recall that probably had eluded me in some cases to, what angsty adolescent life is like. But I loved sports when I was young and still do. I played from middle school on. I played soccer and lacrosse, a pretty fortunate family situation. I have, 2 great parents, also extreme. They're very big jocks, and a brother on either side, and lots of great friends because I went to the Princeton public schools, and many of us were together since nursery school, and oddly and wonderfully remain extremely close now that we are, half a century old.
Yeah,
So,
that's amazing. Yeah. I love that. First of all, are there any of the same places that you still go to that you had when you were a kid? Oh, that's so cute.
So famous on Nassau Street in Princeton is Hoagie Haven. And it's like where they make those subs from like way back in the day that have like piles of mayonnaise and oil and every meat like just thrown together. So Hoagie Haven is well known. It's a campus staple, but also a town staple. And then that's a biggie. PJ's Pancake House is another biggie. These are all like places where you eat an enormous amount of food, where they have like stacks of pancakes that are a mile high. So there's those kinds of haunts, but there's also like all the places that we went to be naughty all still exist. So as teenagers, the places where you would sneak off to gain some degree of distance from your parents. I noticed that my kids are like going to the Institute Woods, which is Princeton Institute for Advanced Study, is right near us. I'm like, oh no, they're going to the Institute. What are they going to do? Is it just like fun and games? Are they going to like, ride dirt bikes? Are they going to smoke pot? So it's fun it's fun slash kind of tricky to watch your kids grow up in this.
Yeah, you already know all the ins and
I
outs,
feel
the
like I do.
secrets.
They tell me I don't know anything and that like my information is wildly dated and that I peaked in high school. That's another like fun hashtag around the house. Peaked in high school.
So at this age as well, you where was your first little peak of journalism and magazines and media? How did that come about?
So I wouldn't have called it media, but I absolutely loved writing.
Okay.
And I did love, I mean, I was, our TVs, which it sounds so wild right now to say, but we had the clicker, no clicker. Like you'd get up and go to that TV set and turn the dial and like fight with your siblings over what you were going to watch we were allowed a half an hour a day, which is it just sounds so profoundly different than what my kids are experiencing. But so I loved words, story arcs. I was much more of what would be now a lifestyle media person probably than a news person. I loved literature. I loved communications. I had some, roles in sort of student leadership. So I think it was actually pretty conspicuous from a young age that I thought I would go into book publishing, because I loved books so much. And I did for a minute, but then I switched over to the internet. And that's when it became, I think what was to me publishing became really media.
So, and you continued that passion, that desire into Hamilton College. You studied comparative literature. And at this point, were you also thinking of long-term saying, okay, this is a career that is sustainable and I want to go into? Was there anyone giving you kind of this back push on it?
Well, so I was career minded in this, not in the sense of like kid who's going to go to med school. I was definitely not a perfect student, but I always worked in town. Like I worked at the bagel joint called Able Bagel. I worked at the bakery. I worked at a restaurant. So I always had jobs. I babysat a lot. I like to earn money. So anytime that we were off, when I wasn't on season for a sport, which is pretty much the winter or the summer, I would work a lot and amass like my savings. So I'd say that was something that was industrious and perhaps semi-entrepreneurial that was evident. I really thought my track was going to be book publishing. And I'll tell you where this plays out is really similar to what I do today. It took me like 50 years to figure out that there was a parody or a parallel. I worked in college for a literary agent and I loved this work. So I got that job not at all through our career center. It was entirely through like kissing up to like my good friend's older sister, who was a published author and had the right connections, writing lots of like letters on typewriters and computers and just kind of being unabashedly like comfortable asking for work, which again, I think dates back to like when I would walk into, restaurants and be like, are you hiring? And so I got internships with literary agents 2 summers in a row, and then one with an international literary scout. In that case, you are selling artists. You're like sort of selling and representing authors. So it wasn't that I wanted to be a writer. And again, I thought I wanted to be an editor, and I still kind of think I'd like to be an editor. I get to edit a lot now, but it's in fast paced. It's not, it's not chapter by chapter. But representing kind of what would today be probably referred to as creators is something that I liked really young. I liked the selling of the talent. Especially when I loved the talent. Today, She Media represents over 2,000 independent websites. So in addition to publishing our own lifestyle sites, we have, all of these unbelievable women primarily who run their own micro businesses as sort of micro media companies themselves. And I'm most comfortable when I'm selling them. And then I also serve on the board of a podcast platform that does the same, where, when you're selling either to audience or to advertiser, you're able to really describe how amazing this individual talent is, which was really similar to being a literary agent or a scout.
Yeah. Okay. I want to touch on something specific that you talked about, which is when you were seeking out an opportunity, you actually went out and found it, right? So even when you wanted to be a waitress, you went to the restaurant, you asked them, are they hiring? I would argue that today it's harder to do that, or at least people do that less, right? And maybe it's because, the safety behind the screen. Now you have email, you have LinkedIn, all these different platforms. Would you say Do you wish that it was still like kind of how you did it? Do you think people should still have that drive and, you know, that passion to be able to just say, look, I'm going to go out, walk there and talk to them and ask them directly? Or how do you play that balance now?
Well, it's an interesting question because you haven't, I think I probably had an advantage in that I don't know why. It's like probably more of a breakdown with my
It's probably you,
therapist.
right?
The fact that I'm comfortable asking for jobs, I'm not comfortable asking for a lot of things, but you know, I think I thought I was good at working, just working, not smart or specifically talented in anything in particular, but more just like I'm a good worker. I work hard. Like I'm willing to work, you know, at the time at the like bagel joint, it was like you work on like Easter, because, you know, the owners were like, who cares about Easter?
Right.
And I was like, great, Easter pays double. I'm in, you know, it's play, like work on Christmas Day. And I was like, great, awesome. See you later, fam. But so I think that industriousness was useful. Today, the networking is just so different. Now, people who are good at it, it's a great advantage because you don't have to live like I lived right outside of New York City. I lived close to Philadelphia. I lived near a lot of jobs. Princeton happens to have a lot of headquarters here. So I was in a good position to do the ask, I think. And, you know, and I went to, went to a privileged small liberal arts school. So I think that the world has been opened up in terms of your ability to find people who can be helpful. That said, the number of emails and DMs and notes I get on LinkedIn for people who just like, quote, want help or like want to, quote, take me to coffee for advice. There are too many. Like I can't, it's hard to qualify them at all. So they're different skill sets. Honestly, these are different skill sets. Walking into a place or asking for a job is one thing. Being really savvy about finding the people who might be inclined to help you and or who would really benefit from your skill set and marketing yourself is different than, I think, selling yourself back in the day.
Yeah. I want to also talk very much about lacrosse, but before that, how do you differentiate those cold messages? Because even I'm thinking of my approach to you, and we both know JJ, so that's kind of how that happened, which is great. But for those who are, you know, want to reach out to you, how do you kind of differentiate the ones that you'll take?
Honestly, what you just said, Carly, is it's the most effective, and I believe this is the most effective, pretty not necessarily universally, but with a lot of people, is if you know somebody whom the person you're reaching out to respects and likes or respects, likes, trusts, or respects. As you say, things doesn't have to be all of them. Ramberg is one of my best friends, so that's an easy one. Like, trust, and respect her. But that is the best qualifier because those people don't really send you people who you're not going to find value in. So that to me, and I have so many wonderful, mostly women in my life who do that. They're smart women who know me, know what I do, who send me people. And sometimes it's people who often people who they just want me to meet because we might help each other out in one way or another. They also send me people who would like to, you know, to work or get advice and thoughts on media. So that's the single best qualifier for me. Now, that's not anybody because LinkedIn has that great function where it's like, hey, you know, this person, can you, set up an intro between us? That's not very effective for me if I don't know who the person is. Cause I'm like, because you have like a zillion thousands of people in LinkedIn that I can't remember / never knew who they were. I've gotten more judicious about who I say yes to, but when it's like an invite, but those are not useful to me, nor is the one where it feels a little too like my mom or my dad, and let's continue this cycle of privilege, despite the fact that I've never actually met you. So again, friends whom I respect, trust, who send me recommendations. I know they're not looking to waste my time. I've found some of the best people that way.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. So I want to talk a bit about lacrosse. And obviously we have that similarity in that I started playing soccer when I was 5. I played at Stanford for 4 years. So
dude, that's so much bit more badass than
No, not at all. Not playing team sports, at least in my experience, and I hope that I will continue to see this through, but I see it definitely play out in many ways, whether it's just even being a team player or receiving feedback and being open to feedback. I would love to know your experience, especially now as the freaking CEO of She Media. How do you see your experience as a, playing team sports growing up? How does it manifest today?
I mean, I've gotten more and more hooked on the idea that team sports, and I'm thinking differently about individual sports, but I'm thinking more about those as well lately. But team sports, I think if you play them with heart and you play for, a period of time that shows a commitment, say 3 years plus, I feel like it's some of the best preparation for business specifically, and not just for leadership, but for being a good team member. And I think regardless of your title or amount of time served at a company, it's very rare that you're going to be always in the leadership position. You're often in the teammate, the support position. You're often benched. Every freaking metaphor works too. Like the more I play tennis now, and I'm in the throes of trying to get beyond, like, say, knee high to shoulder high in surfing, or shoulder to like ear high on my surf adventure. It is like every metaphor of like getting knocked down. I mean, that's more obvious, but like sometimes with surf, you just don't catch a single wave, but you feel good about having gotten wet, having like duck dived out to the far reaches of the green waves. Like there's so many wonderful things with tennis. It's like you play to the score, not to just your opponent, like taking more risks when you're down. So I now find, like, whenever I'm playing a sport or coaching a sport, I am like infused with endless useful metaphors for business, which I didn't make that connection when I was younger. I hope that girls today are guided by a coach or a parent or a friend in that direction, because it's really soothing to pull in, to make some of your work life into a game, a competitive sport. So I will admit, straight to with college students, the bottom where they list their sports. And I will also take like competitive debate, competitive chess, competitive. It doesn't have to be an athletic endeavor, and you certainly don't have to be varsity. It's just sticking with it and being a competitor and being a teammate that I love, 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 love.
Yeah, I love that, because I think you're right. It's just having that competitiveness that becomes ingrained in you, and then that, that drive and that ability to say, look, we all have this similar mission that we need to accomplish, which goes such a long way. And you almost see it in different levels of business too, like me kind of starting off my career versus, leadership. So I love it. I think it's really true. So take me now, beginning of your career. I know that you went more to sales and marketing, and it was a little bit away from the publishing and that aspect. So walk me a bit through that. What made you go into that route?
The very earliest, and I talked to a lot of people at all stages of career about this, but I started as an international literary scout. I mean, as an assistant to an assistant to an assistant. I was just really, really aggressive in my performance there, although it was still, it was brutal. It's a really competitive business. I was making, this will blow your mind, I was making $18,000 a year. My big raise after a year was 10%, which at that stage was, maybe I didn't quite get to 20 grand, which was fine. But I say to women often, like, don't be embarrassed that you want to earn more money. Like, it's okay. Like, I didn't like, paying less rent than my roommate, or, ever having to rely or ask my parents for dinner, for like to pay if we went out together, not to be able to take them out to dinner. So I was not offered a job. A friend of my older brother's, who remains one of my best friends and kind of mentors, was at a startup called Interactive Imaginations, and was like, we could use like an office manager. I didn't even know what the internet was, didn't use email, but I was like, oh, it's 25 grand instead of 19,800. That is a massive difference. And I don't see myself going this extremely long-term hierarchical, very linear ladder structure of book publishing that I didn't love it. I wanted to be able to, like, if I work my ass off, I can jump layer, like I can jump from freshman ball to varsity or whatever. I don't want it to be quite as linear as what I see around me. So I flipped over there. This was the best because I had no idea what I was doing. I was best in that you just like pure drive, like hanging out with programmers, like buying them Mountain Dew all night so that they would start to tell me a little bit about what they did. It's all like college kids. There's a bunch of guys from Cornell who'd found this gaming company together. And it was so smart, not smart because I didn't actually know this. It was getting into an industry where there was significant demand and very little supply of people who'd worked in that industry. And so that's, again, totally random. Like I didn't think of it that way. I thought of it as like, it's scary. I don't know what the internet is, but it pays more. And I like this woman. She's cool. I have a crush on her. And so, it was, and then also I was like, I had the fortune that if I failed, I'd probably, move onto someone's couch. I probably would not, it wasn't going to be the end of the world. So I sort of took that as I can take a risk. I'm 22 and a half or something. So that was for me, the big move was to go into web, and then sales for me was sales. There's no like real advanced degree.
Yeah.
It's just, if you're good at asking for things and you believe in what your product is, that for me is like kind of ideal, and remains an ideal space. And so that just kind of happened. And then you start making crazy money, and then you start being a real scarcity in New York, especially. So that just traveled on from there. Sales, at some point I wanted the product as well, because I didn't ever want to sell trash. And so I got product, I got edit, I got all the things that ultimately we were building in order to sell it and monetize it and hopefully reinvest in the companies.
Yeah. So how I see it almost is you were kind of walking along in your career and just like picking up these incredible little skills and into your toolkit and saying, okay, this may not be, I'm going to dive into this because it's new and who knows what will happen, but something, I'll get some value out of it.
I think that's absolutely right. It was not a like looking down at 5-year plan or 10-year plan. And I do think one of the things that was most useful that I'd have to say my parents taught me was just, regardless of what the job is, just try really hard, like put full effort on unabashed effort into it, and you won't be wasting your time. Like if you dial out and you're kind of like, I don't like this job, I'm not going to really try hard. That's where I think then you are wasting probably your time and other people's time. So I tried my ass off through like my 20s. But sometimes I'm like, why don't I dial it a little occasionally? Like all these quiet quitters it's a great concept, but it's not possible for my wiring.
Yeah. And right now, when I'm talking to you about it, it sounds great, right? And it sounds like inspiring in that sense that you can just work your ass off and kind of change directions and things. But in the actual moment, did you have moments where you're like, what the hell am I doing? And why am I doing this? And this is hard as shit. And
definitely.
How did you navigate that?
I had like a stack of when I was leaving, or I was not happy in publishing, really. It was really assistant work and looked like it was going to be, which I could work really hard on that, but I had no control or ability to go beyond my job at all. So when I was not super happy there, I started, amassing this is the graduate degree I need, or this is I thought educational technology was what I wanted to do, which I didn't even know what that was. It just sounded cool. I thought I should go to law school. Definitely business school was I thought I would go to business school, and I applied and ended up getting a job at Disney right when I was, heading off, and decided to delay and then didn't go back. But I know I was often remain confused about whether you're putting your time towards the thing that has the greatest impact and uses your skills the best. And there were times I once quit a job without a job. It only happened once where I quit and didn't I was like, I can't work for this company. I don't really believe in where we're going, and I don't like the way it's being run. And the quitting without a job definitely feels like a little bit like an epic fail. So no, it wasn't like this was chill, and I just, stepping stones just appeared. A lot of the time I would be scared of getting fired or scared of not advancing, and, sort of not imposter syndrome, which I think is put on women as a nasty veil. But I would often feel like I'm kind of faking it. And at what point am I not faking it? And I probably was faking it. So no, I stayed places too long. I quit too early sometimes. I made every mistake, and probably will make several more.
So, okay, I can go in a couple different directions, but let's first tap into that imposter syndrome. So tell me a little bit why you think it's this nasty veil that people put specifically on women.
Well, because I see it as it's something many women will relate to. They'll be like, yes,
Yeah,
I feel that.
definitely.
And I think when it was discovered, which was, it was a couple of, I don't know if they were, I won't get their degrees right, but two women who wrote, an early paper on this idea that, women, girls often felt like they didn't deserve something, or they must have, done terribly on a test or whatever, and just didn't have faith. I think and that was meaningful research that cracked open a new area of sort of how women approached work, and what tools they had. So that's super, I don't take anything away from that. It's that now, like, that she has imposter syndrome really puts it, I think, on the individual, rather than thinking, what is the systemic issue that underpins this feeling of, of faking it, or of non-confidence, or of, the mediocre white man in the room deserves it more than I do, whatever it is. And I think it's only more profound in what we've seen in the research I've read, the further you get from being the dominant sort of privileged profile. So the more othered you might be in a room, in business, right, the more it's there often is a fear of getting sort of found out, or being deemed, even probably being deemed, not up to the task. So I don't know, I would put it on the people around you, I guess, is my point, where imposter syndrome says the problem is the girl, the woman, the individual, instead of the people around who are judging her in a certain way, who have set up expectations that cause this feeling of non-confidence.
I like that. And it goes back to the idea where this whole issue of the gap between men and women, for instance, a lot of the narrative should be around the people in the room, not us, or not me. Right. So I like that a lot. And you mentioned how throughout your career, you either, got fired, you quit too early, you left without a job, all the different things that could have come up. I'm so curious, because as someone who's also played soccer for so many years, it becomes such a core part of your identity. And I'm curious if you had the same thing, where how you did in lacrosse translated to how you viewed yourself as a person. And so now, kind of from a career lens, are you able to separate the two and say, this, maybe I didn't do as well in this meeting or in this job, but it doesn't say that Sam as a person is, failing. Mm-hmm. Have you had that discrepancy, or yeah?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it really, that how much of your sort of high school to college athleticism, like the specific role you played. Like, I was third home, which was, a corporate, I was center and then third home, and then attack wing, but I moved around for various reasons. And I do think that there's a correlate, actually, and there's probably a correlate in that I've never been fired. And I think that is my greatest fear in some ways, is being sat down, and I've been benched plenty, whether we're talking about sports or other, but I've never quit or been fired. I've quit, plenty, but I'm thinking back to the sports. It was important to finish, always important to finish. I think I have left jobs before my time because of fear of being fired, but I hold that as a great fear that is it's gonna pop at some point. But I think the role that I had, I was never the best player. I always was a player who missed practice, never. I would play with mono or whatever. I loved my teammates and found really great things in them on the field, even if we weren't friends off the field. That's probably why so many of my best friends remain people I played lacrosse with in high school. I think also it plays to my strengths in terms of being pretty direct or aggressive or whatever. So I do think that the person you are in high school, in a lot of ways, it's funny how it's always somewhat present, or middle school, or whatever your formative maybe time was, that's always a bit present for me. As is I think the teammate element is always present. You should always be stoked for your teammate, even if you were benched, for that person to take that role, the position that you were playing, you thought you were playing great. You still, I feel this fundamental, you are a bad sport if you're not psyched for that person. That is bad sportsmanship, which is, in my family, the worst thing you can be. So, so yeah, even if I don't feel it though, I'm like, that's wrong. So I think that it's quite a lot. Yeah. To your point.
Yeah. And when you were at a startup, was this almost, I would think this is the first little taste of a startup and going from the ground up, building a company. Did you ever get that personal itch saying, okay, maybe I should go start something my own?
It's weird. It's weird that not weird, but it is just given the access I've had, because I've been at so many. I've been at 4 actual startups, like 2 of which went public, 1 sold, 1 failed. And even She Knows, the company I joined that became She Media, was a startup that was then bought by private equity. And then I was involved in the sale to Penske Media, who owns us now, from private equity. And that's where we've really grown tremendously. But I have never had an idea. This is sad, but I've never had an idea that I thought was like, must be created. And I never thought I'd be an author. When I was working in my undergraduate years, when I was working for agents, I thought I would like to sell other people's things, like find the people who I thought were really genius. So it's funny, like a lot of, like, our mutual friend JJ has founded like 3 companies. So many of my best friends have been truly entrepreneurial in that, like, risking failure on their own, on their own brands. And I'm so impressed by that, but I've never even come close, honestly, to starting my own thing.
Yeah. No, and I think I relate it back to almost like the assist, right? Like, you are the perfect person at giving an amazing assist. And
I love an assist.
Yeah,
There's nothing
which is great.
I like better, because that person who scores adores you and sees it. It might not be seen from the sidelines, but you feel it. I love it. A solid assist is the best. And my son's getting into lacrosse right now. And I always talk to him about, like, setting up, like, the person who's going to goal and, like, going for grounders and all these things that aren't as flashy as what he'd like to be doing.
I love it. I love it. So you've been at She Media for 10 years this year, which is amazing, which is so incredible. I want to take me back to that moment where you joined, and then when the CEO role became a reality and you were now the CEO. What was going through your mind?
Both of those were, so taking the job before was the one I quit without a plan. And I'd gotten really hooked on social impact and kind of triple bottom line, the idea in that case of people and planet and profit. Now it's more purpose and people and profit. I never wanted to join a company that was not profit driven. I just thought didn't play to my strengths on the competitive elements and also being guided by a tangible. So I knew I wanted to go into something that played to my strengths, where I could really get to, I liked gaining control. Like, I liked having more control. I realized at a certain stage, I didn't want to just sell the product or market the product. I wanted to help make the product. And identify the market opportunity and where there were gaps. So I knew I wanted a certain level.
That's great.
I'd been in clean tech and SaaS at that point. So I was going to be in tech in some way. And digital media had been like a core part of my upbringing in earlier in my career. Thank you so much for listening to the show this week. I loved that I saw an opportunity. If you enjoyed, please spread the word. Tell someone about She Leads, or post about it on social media and tag us.
At the time, it was called She Knows. If you want to contact us, feel free to send over a message through the She Leads Instagram page at sheleads.show. If you want to follow us on Twitter, our account is at She Leads Show, and mine is at Carly Malatsky. This episode was produced and edited by Nick Burchell.
I like the level.
Thank you also to our partner, Floodgate.
The person who hired me,
if you're passionate about startups and want to learn more about the starting journey of those who have built groundbreaking companies, I highly recommend listening to Starting Greatness with Mike
So it was
Jr.,
not a hard decision, but nor was it a dream job at the time.
He has an incredible show that, in my opinion, is definitely worth your time.
I'll be
Thanks again.
Chief Revenue Marketing Officer for a media company, but it's not the game-changing, sustainability innovation that might have been an easier yes for me, but it was a stable company, and I needed that. And so it was, and then becoming CEO was wild, because that was right when we were acquired. I was acquired by Penske Media. That was a real hustle for us to get to that. I had never been that involved in the selling of a company where you're really leading a lot of it. And Jay Penske is a really entrepreneurial, innovative entrepreneur. I just said that twice, but he was a leader and young. very, young, had bought a lot of companies. And he kind of quickly and without a lot of preparation was like, yeah, you're going to be CEO and lead the company, which I was really flattered and a little bit like, whoa, okay. So there's no, like, the buck stops. I can't complain about somebody not doing something I thought they should have done. It's going to be like with me, which I felt ready for, but I also was pretty scared. And I hadn't gone aggressively for the role at all. I didn't go for it at all. In fact, I didn't think there would be a switch in CEO. So that was tricky. And really, I guess, ultimately validating. And it's been 5 years since that flip, and the business has performed really well. So I feel good about it.
No, it's incredible. Is there a sense when you do become CEO that you lose touch of what's happening internally amongst, because like you said, there's no one to complain to, you have an issue with someone else. So have you seen that? And how can you get a good sense of what's happening?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely see a disconnect with like the day to day. It surprises me still that like younger people at the company are, that there are people I've never spoken to or who don't feel like they could like just walk into the office, because I've always been with startups where there were very few boundaries or semi startups. So, and I've spent a lot of time doing admin, like org charts and administrative work on budgets and a lot of, spreadsheets, which is not necessarily my strength. So there's that. It's more like, it's management, which is hard for me to get as excited about as I do when I'm in the game, like in the scrum, just to throw some rugby in there. But and you do lose touch. So the best way I can think of to handle it is to make time and really be deliberate about at least a few rising stars within the company who are in different areas, so that I'm connected to them and their sort of struggles, which are really different in some ways, and really similar to probably what I saw in my 20s. But, and then I also have, I have trusted people who run departments, but I think you give up. I don't know. I have not managed to stay as in touch with the 100 people who like comprise She Media as I was in any other company.
Yeah. I want to touch a bit on almost the ugly side of journalism, if you will, and how the economics of journalism affects the quality of media. So walk me through that. Walk me through that a little bit, because I know, I have
strong feelings on this, unfortunately, because it's like really bad, because I start ragging on my entire industry and you kind of wonder why I'm here. But so the economics of media are broken. I actually did a TEDx talk on this, which sounds so cheesy, but on the change in, evolution, which is a devolution or a kind of demise of quality of content based on the economics. It's not like people started writing terrible content that was short form and not true and hateful. That didn't just happen. The economics of media reward of digital, which is the majority of media consumption now, reward high clicking, pass along media, which is so cheap. You throw up like an angry statement that is like denying the Holocaust or some odious like it's so trash that's online, that it just like, this is vexing enough that it gets me really angry. But that shit yields a lot of money because people share it, people like it, every engagement is worth something. Advertisers don't block from everything that's horrible and hateful. And by the way, this is the other piece of the economics. So there's that. There's like click trash, salacious, or truly like things that make people angry, or just angry. Angry is you share more stuff that you're angry about than you do any other, or respond more to stuff you're angry about than you do to any other kind of emotion that arises. So that's genius. Like, do that all day long, make people angry, because they will do your publishing for you. They will send out that message and respond to it. Even if they're responding, of course, in argument, still another view. So that's one thing that's horrible. There's no quality control. Literally, the majority of consumption now has nobody in the editor's seat, which might sound like I like a hierarchy. No, it's like I like a tiny bit of accountability for factual accuracy and impact. Or who are you going to call? Like, you're going to call Mark Zuckerberg and be like, dude, you didn't, moderate this piece of content. And no, but that's maybe not how it was built. That's like the quote downstream effect, for which it seems no one's responsible. So when you go to Congress, like, by the way, the advertisers aren't called in despite being the funders of all this trash. So they're like, I mean, it was so painful to watch, because it's like the economic model, people, which is breakable. You can change that. So there's that. The other thing is that journalism is really expensive. And so not only is it not always salacious because it's factual often, or you hope, or sourced at least, it's expensive. It's long form often. Advertisers start blocking away from words like the Ukraine, words like uterus, words like Nazi. Like, you block away from these words, which is like, on the surface, it's like, I mean, blocking away from women's biological body parts is sick and wrong. But I mean, I get that you block away sometimes from hateful content, or what you think of, but that means you're defunding the creation of the actual journalism that's fighting that. Because again, the expensive stuff is the stuff that goes and does actual reporting in the lands where it's necessary. Like, that's expensive. You're in a war zone. You're in and so that is not rewarded. That makes no more money, and typically less money than your puppy. Or, I mean, let's just take it away from the hate, and like my picture of my kid, or my, puppy, or my meme. Those are just as valuable to advertisers. And advertisers seem to feel no accountability for quality. They say it has to be brand safe, in quotes, which again is like the loosest of all filters. It's like, I don't want to go next to porn or firearms, but I also don't want to go next to the terms Black Lives Matter, or, it's so busted, considering nobody trips about this the way they should. So anyway, you hit me on one that is like so weird to me, see chief marketing officers who validate these spends get away with it, that they're just, that their only obligation is for brand safety, not for accuracy, not for veracity, not for anything else. Yeah.
You have every right to feel this passion for it, because it is so skewed. Yeah. And even from your first point, what becomes an even bigger issue is that the general public, they're just reading, they're consuming, and they're not thinking, they're not the source. And exactly. So for them, it's very easy to do retweet and share. And for them, they're just like, it's in my feed. It is 100% true. Right. So how do you, almost to give some type of optimism in this space, almost. How can you see it go down a good route?
Well, I do think, as much as I'm ranting about it, I think that a lot of people are starting to catch this. Definitely. Right. I mean, with the storming the Capitol, with some big, epic, also salacious. It was okay to report on those things because they were salacious or not salacious. They were tittillating. And so those, when you get really, really bad behavior, that tends to like perk up the pass-alongs. So there's been, and Trump helped in some way. I mean, hurt in so many ways, but and again, let's say that right now I'm being qualitative. That is my opinion. That is not exactly. Right. But I think that the concerns in some circles around accuracy and big statements being, Twitter having some accountability to that, for example. And I think that, Dorsey was like pretty good about saying like, I'm not going to have this. There are other downstream effects of that are negative. You know what I have most faith in right now, which is great because it brings us around, is podcasts, because it's a human talking and it's more intimate. It's not like you're tweeting on your podcast or like saying like a one line thing, or you can't show a picture of a puppy. So it does tend to, like, I know who I'm talking to. The people know who are listening to your podcast know whom they're listening to. So I'm really down for audio right now. It's funny. It's a return, and that's how I'm getting a lot of my news more and more.
Yeah, and I think building off of that, almost it's going along with our attention span as well. So even like TikTok and podcasts and this audio form, it's moving a bit away from this long text form, which has more, slippery slope in a sense with fake news and whatnot. So I could see that. And I think that is a bit promising in that sense.
I hope so. Gen Z is not audio centric yet. So I am, even with my kids, I try to, I put on interesting podcasts or audio. in the car when there's a drive, and then they'll notice like, oh, this is funny actually, like, or it doesn't have to be totally informative, but you
Right.
at least know the source, you know that and I'll say to them like, this is all hilarious opinion from like Phoebe Robinson or from, often, based in fact or reading or research, but you know what you're getting. It's not purporting to be news. And I just think podcasts really tell you what where you are.
Yeah.
They also have to be published. It takes a minute. Like you have to figure out how to produce. And that is, it's once the tools become so easy and friction free that I think the liars and cheaters and, come in. Yeah. So I hope podcasting remains
more
transparent.
Authentic. Yeah. I love that. And I'm gonna check out your TED Talk about it, because I think it's fascinating.
So, I'm slithering. I'm not good on stage, but it was the
I'm excited. Okay, more to fun questions. Sam, what would you say is your superpower?
Oh, dear Lord. Oh, God. I definitely don't carry one around that I'm aware of. Oh, you know what? Actually, my family had this conversation, and I'm often, sadly, the butt of the jokes, and my two teens and my husband, and not my husband, the two teens. And they decided, okay, so my husband's really a great musician and really good at surfing. My kids are fucking genius, because everyone thinks their kids are genius. So they're just average, but no, I'm kidding. But they're have many, many skills. And one of them was like, she was really trying to come up with something. And she was like, Mom, you're the fastest typer in the family. So, okay. But I think of the family, and I think I'm a pretty fair competitor. I love to compete, but I think I'm fair. So a good loser, but a good teammate. And I know when to flip into leadership. Leadership can be really hard. Sometimes it's like, this is what we're doing. I know you all don't agree, but this is what we're doing. Yeah. And so I think I'm pretty good at flipping roles. That would be.
I like that. I think even what I took from that even is you have an ability to remove your ego from the situation.
Oh, I hope so. I'm very aware.
Yeah, because I think that comes with being a
married to a psychiatrist. Yeah,
and I think that comes with being almost a fair competitor. A lot of people, can't be a loser. It's hard for them because their ego is in the way. So I like that a lot.
Yes. Or if you get your defenses rolling to a degree. So I think that being aware of ego and I think self-awareness doesn't mean you can modulate all your feelings and behaviors. I don't feel that I've gotten to that stage or ever will, but I believe I'm pretty good at knowing where something's coming from. Like if I'm like, oh, I'm so pissed, like I feel really defensive about this, but then I'm like, oh, that probably has something to do with X, like with this insecurity or this thing. So I believe that that's very useful, and is a little bit like, back to our sports analogies, a little bit like evaluating, like I really wasn't in the right position when I tried to take that pass. Like I didn't get to the open spot. So yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. Even just taking yourself away from the situation, connecting the dots, almost like backcasting them, which is cool. So what would you say is your most contrarian but high conviction opinion?
Oh, God. Well, I mean, the defunding of journalism is sometimes contemplated as contrarian or I've got one. And it's becoming less contrarian, which is awesome. I think menopause is a patriarchal construct.
Oh, so wow. Okay.
I think that which is, I'm 50 and a half. So I do tend to when I'm saturated in a subject matter, I probably get more strongly opinionated. But Gen X, I think, is really taking on menopause as the idea that women over 50 are sort of meant to exit stage left and are no longer hot or meant to enjoy sex or work. I think that those quiet societal expectations are produced by the patriarchy in order to get us out of work at a competitive age, to validate the sort of perpetual obsession with women's youth as sort of their, where men, the older and more powerful they get, the better. I think it reaffirms the kind of Handmaid's Tale of our fertility being our value. And so I don't think that's actually that's contrarian in lots of dinner tables, but perhaps in my Brooklyn bubble, not the ones I'm sitting at, but yeah, probably that.
No, I think that's a great one. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, last question is, what craft are you spending a lifetime honing?
Oh, that's so fun. You have great questions. They're really thoughtful. I think self-awareness is probably in there, and like owning my stuff. I'm trying to, okay, I don't know if there's a craft or a skill, but focus. I have never been great at focus. Watching it, you might find this, like if you choose to produce offspring, like it's very funny when you watch a kid who has a similar, thing that my son is not. He's so fast thinking and I'm so impressed by him. But I think focus probably is the thing, and present tense,
Yeah.
and really being in the moment and appreciating it instead of thinking what's next or regretting something that happened. So I'd say that is probably the
Yep.
thing that I've been honing for a while. And by the way, just because you're tying it so well, sports get me into flow zone, and finding that
Yeah.
flow, that whether it's like surfing, rock climbing, lacrosse, these are the kinds of sex does this, not necessarily, I mean, in general, flow is achieved through sex. For me, being with one of my kids at a certain time can produce that, really good friends and like cracking up. That's the kind of experience that I like to find.
Yep, I love that. I absolutely love it. I could think of myself when I go to literally a wall and I just go kick a soccer ball against it, headphones in,
Get there,
like
right?
nothing else. Yeah, I just forget time. Everything kind of just goes away. So I love that.
Find those. You should hone those, babe, because
Yeah.
I didn't at a young age. I was like, I should be on the next thing. I should be on the next thing. And it's so great that you're already so present in your,
That's just one aspect. I'm sure everything else aspect is more like, what's next? I have to do this. So anyway, but okay, Sam, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much. It's been great.
Thank you. You're doing great at what you're doing. These are fun questions. So I'm actually kind of finding flow. So well done.
Thank you so much for listening to the show this week. If you enjoyed, please spread the word. Tell someone about She Leads or post about it on social media and tag us. If you want to contact us, feel free to send over a message through the She Leads Instagram page at sheleads.show. If you want to follow us on Twitter, our account is at SheLeadsShow and mine is at Carly Malatsky. This episode was produced and edited by Nick Furshow. Thank you also to our partner, Floodgate. If you're passionate about startups and want to learn more about the starting journey of those who have built groundbreaking companies, I highly recommend listening to Starting Greatness with Mike Maples Jr., the founding partner of Floodgate. He has an incredible show that, in my opinion, is definitely worth your time. Thanks again.